All right, we're good. What's up, everyone? This is episode 140 of Decentralized Revolution. My name is Nate Thurston. Joining me tonight, not our normal friend Aaron Harris, but another friend, Austin Padgett. Austin, how you doing?
Hello. Got a few fun things to talk about today.
We got some stuff for sure. I don't know if you've been on, in a bit to talk to people, or if we just assume everyone knows who you are. Maybe you should give yourself a little introduction since I didn't really give you one, just in case.
Sure, yeah, Angela's my wife. I've been in the Mises Caucus since 2017 in the Facebook group, but I was living in Thailand. So when I got to the US, I showed up to some events in 2020, and that's when I got involved. Um, and yes, I do a podcast, co-host with Rudyard Lynch, who's the host of What If Alt Hist. Our podcast is called History 102. So we go over every kind of topic in history, ranging from Neolithic, Bronze Age, to the Holy Roman Empire, to mid 16th century Western Europe, to the death of God. So kind of wide ranging, and he incorporates a lot of analysis into his history, and we also, add an economic Austrian understanding of Austrian economics into the historical analysis, which provides a lot of explanatory value that you don't normally get in history.
Yeah, I was looking around at all that earlier. Everything on there's really good, by the way. And it looks like you guys are got some great traction and everything. I mean, it's looks like it's going awesome.
Oh yeah, we get 25 to 50,000 views on YouTube, and we're on a few other platforms. And Elon's posted the link to the show a bunch of times. A lot of people, uh, smart people, are big fans of it. So it's been pretty fun.
I
Uh,
saw I saw the Elon post. That's awesome, man. So we've got a few news items that we could talk about. Of course, Aaron had thrown out a few, and we're probably going to roughly stick to what his ideas were there. And now, there's a main topic going on right now that a lot of people are talking about, and of course, that'd be a good point for me to make a joke, but it's no, it's Epstein. That's the thing that we're talking about. I wanted to get your uh, initial reaction to it, say when you find out about everything Sunday night, Monday morning, to where you are right now and like what you think's actually happening.
sure. What happened Sunday night?
Well, that's when the initial news dump was. That was a DOJ memo. So
Okay.
that's like when we got the news.
Yes. Like leading up to the election, I didn't talk about Epstein too much. I know as much about it as anybody in the circles, but I'm not a super expert on it. Um, uh, so yeah, I guess I wasn't too surprised in terms of expectations, because, like I said to when I was speaking with Trump, I approached every topic as in, this is what is generally popular. This is what libertarians believe, and I don't know what kind of deep state pressures exist on that XYZ topic in what way. So I guess I always viewed it through a lens in which there's like information I don't know. So I don't know the exact calculation they're making. And you can say that there's no calculation to be made in any circumstances, and we can comment on the expectations of the people on the issue. But in terms of what they were going to do, I never really had a clear feeling that they were going to, release the list, because are there threats? Is there opportunity cost? A lot of people are saying they're not releasing the list because of Israel, but like Elon's saying Trump is on the list. He's not Israel. Um, that's not, his relationship with Epstein is pretty well established in a kind of minor way, but the people on that list, or the people involved in the circle, are some of the richest people in the U.S., the royal family, England, etc. So there could be a million considerations in this calculus. Like, do you start a deep state war where they're like, gonna do false flags and escalate wars, or like what's the exact calculus here? And I don't exactly know.
So just to be clear, that you're saying that you don't believe the official story that there is no list, and that most of the things we've been talking about just were a crazy conspiracy this whole time. You are at least at the point where you're like, okay, there is a list. We can just argue about why they're hiding it.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's kind of like we act kind of red pilled and naive about this at the same time. Like, we know there's a deep state, we know there's these nefarious interests, we know the intel communities, been in charge of the government since like post World War II, basically. And yet we expect there not to be any like opportunity cost or difficulties with managing a situation of that nature.
It is much easier to talk about things that you want them to do and what they should do, and then also act out the process of that actually happening without it having any other terrible ramifications that, I would say I would make the right decision at that point. But, I would have never thought that Cash and Dan Bongino would have uh, gone along with it, but then when you think about it, like, what are the things that they could have been told? Like, the world's economy is gonna crash if we release this list or,
We'll do
the
an EMP on Wall Street or
yeah,
something.
like,
It's not. Yeah, people always think of it in terms of blackmail, but that's like bottom of the rung of leverage.
yeah, I mean, there's always the idea like, "Hey, we'll, we'll kill your family if you do this." You gotta go along
So,
with this. Like, that's like a baseline, fear tactic or threat that they could make for sure, but then what is it that they get told in that room that people seem to go into when they come out? They're totally, they're pretty in line with all the stuff the deep state wants. Maybe they got a
yeah,
folder on you, or maybe they're just telling you, here's what's actually on the list. Like you're talking about the end of Western civilization. If we do this, is it really worth it to you? Um, you know, I I think it is good to be realistic. It is fun to
right,
talk about, and of course, I'm gonna do my share of complaining and, preaching about how they need to do it because that's what I want done, and that's the world I would like to live in. Um,
right. And,
it's
and there's a limit on how many people you can kill, right? Like, you have to be really desperate to try and kill someone. The Trump assassination attempts were a pretty like shocking example of that, because if they were successful, then the backlash to that would have been absolutely insane. It would have been a big problem for them. So they'd have to be really desperate to do that. And this is the kind of thing, the Epstein list is the kind of thing that can uh, elevate that desperation, like backing an animal into a corner. And there's a lot of deep state factions on multiple sides of the conflict. So, um, like, how many of the people that you're using to manage this situation are going to be involved in that, or just like institutional exposure, not even people, it might be people who are gone. um, so it's like certainly a complicated situation.
now, we can both probably, we can both agree that we want it to be released. We think the people on that list, deserve to be brought to whatever kind of justice. Like, we both want that. Um, what I What I did wanna know about was, did you see the video of Trump's response to the reporter when they asked him, the question, when was that? Yesterday? I assume you saw
Hmm.
that video.
Yeah,
So
not much of a response.
no, so
um,
that's actually where I think they messed up the most in uh, this whole strategy or this whole plan. Like, I I would have been shocked if there actually was a list or the videos still exist. I'm shocked if they
sure.
still exist right now. we've it's the same thing with the JFK files. Like, do you really think that they killed the president and then they had that guy write a report about it and then they put it in the filing cabinet and
Yeah,
then they left it there and basically we've been refusing to open that filing cabinet and look at it so far. I'm like, some of these things are probably just not going to be in official records, and some of them are. We've seen plenty of terrible things in official records too. So, like, I didn't expect them to really even find anything. I expected it to be destroyed, and
right,
that's what I'm shocked they didn't go with. That's the weirdest part about this whole thing to me, is them basically throwing out this case closed, mission accomplished, case closed banner and expecting that everyone's gonna go along with that, and then expecting at the first, like, real press conference for Trump after that announcement is made that no one's gonna have any questions about it, and then basically saying it's time to just move on from this. That shows a pretty big disconnection from where a lot of a lot of people are on this
right.
thing, you know?
Yeah, I think the Epstein flight logs are actually available. So like,
Mm.
there's a list in a sense that's already been available and around forever. Well, not for all of human history, but and then I'm pretty sure Maxwell had a book that was like buried as part of her trial. So that's a thing. And Mike Benz, I know, was talking about how there would definitely be a code name for Jeffrey Epstein in the CIA database because he was working with them since the 70s. I think he started with the royal family and their social circles, and then worked with the CIA, and then eventually everybody. And he was money laundering first, arms trading, and then so they could have like a bunch of information on that, even though it's not the sex stuff. But my take on it is also that it could look like a botched response from our point of view. It's certainly like you know not very well thought out in a way that makes you think maybe there's other considerations. And I'm not saying that this is the case. Just an example of a situation that would provide a reason for it not making sense to us would be that say they said they were going to release the list, gave a bunch of influencers the list to put pressure on the deep state people that are afraid that they're going to hit the red button and blow it up, and then negotiate their things and then not hit the red button. And we're like, what happened? I thought you all we saw was you threatening to hit the red button. We didn't see them saying, but I won't do it if XYZ. And I'm not saying that that's how it unfolded. Just as an example, when you're on the outside, it's impossible to commentate on things with certainty. And obviously, that's not going to be strictly satisfactory to people because, this is what you were told for the last 50 years is that, oh, you don't know what the president's seen. You don't know what the consideration is. You don't know about their intel on how bad these guys are and why we have to do this. And no one's in the mood to trust people. But if you got a hypothetical situation where you had someone come in that was going to do something good, accomplishing anything without a red button, the consequences for which could be larger than we understand, are means it's going to play out in that way in a good timeline or a bad timeline. So it kind of leaves us a little bit helpless, which is why you see a lot of like angst on the internet. Another take on it I saw was that they're just bad at lying, because like they thought they were going to release the list and then they got the talk or whatever and they're like, oh well, I can't, and they're like, well, stop asking me about it. So it could be a million different things.
Yeah, it is really difficult when you're on the outside looking at all this stuff. I'm sure there's a lot going on, always that we don't know about. Like, if you're good on the Epstein thing, I was going to ask you your thoughts on this whole "we're going to send weapons to Ukraine" thing, which is another new development that we've gotten in the last couple days now. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I can actually make a pretty I can actually steel man that decision pretty well. I wouldn't say I'd ever
Interesting.
do it because I wouldn't want to, steal resources from the American people and do it. But I can actually steel man the case for doing that. But anyhow, that's the new announcement that we're going to be sending defensive weapons over to Ukraine.
Yeah,
Sounds a lot like what we've been doing for the last couple of years now, or however many years it's been now.
yeah. It's a real bummer. Um, I was hoping that that conflict would be wrapped up by now. It was a bit of a downer when the UK helped Ukraine bomb Russia's air force, like deep in the country. Uh, I don't know if we would have made more progress on the negotiations without that, but it's getting to the point where, like, with Trump's formula, like with Iran, if the negotiations not working for a long enough period of time, eventually he's going to go back to the other side and do what he can to get more leverage for that negotiation. Like, he's going to be like, okay, you don't want to stop the war, then we're going to make it so it's basically provide leverage, because maybe Putin's like, oh, I'll take all of Ukraine or something. He wants the U.S. to get out. He thinks he can still hang in. So now Trump thinks he has to threaten him with more leverage, So you knew the longer that there wasn't a deal made, the more likely that we were going to get another round of funding. Because he canceled the round of funding right at the beginning of the year. Like $250 billion for Ukraine was canceled. So that was a big deal. But there was no peace, and it's been a long time. And so we're getting stuck back in uh, that side of the ledger. But hopefully it doesn't escalate and we can start negotiating again.
Yeah, I feel the same way on all that. Clearly, like I'm against it, but I also understand it if I looked at things from a practical standpoint. I'm not arguing in favor of doing it because that would violate my libertarian principles to argue in favor of that. But I can see why because I sort of recognized that this was going to be an issue like a couple months ago when you could see the negotiation wasn't going that well,
Mm-hmm.
and Putin wasn't really willing to leave. Like, why would he leave? We're done sending them weapons. No one else is going to be able to help them. Um, they might as well just stay in there and try to take the country. And so when Trump goes in to negotiate, like, what's he negotiating with? We're not going to help Ukraine anymore. And so what really is they've withstood a ton of sanctions, The economy's not doing that bad
Mm-hmm.
relatively. And so what's your negotiating point? And I always thought that it was gonna have to be that we're gonna keep sending them weapons, so they can keep defending themselves, against, from Russia. So, yeah, I'm not shocked about it. It's, disappointing, to be sure because, now we got, like, the Epstein thing, and we got the money for or the weapons for Ukraine thing, which will be money. We have to replace the weapons that we're sending them, and the weapons that we replace them with are more expensive than the ones that we're sending them. So we have to build back those stockpiles that we've
Mm-hmm.
depleted, and so it's going to cost us money regardless, of course. So yeah, disappointed would be my would be my big thing. I try to not be so Debbie Downer about Trump all the time, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I'm I'm I guess I'm not a Republican or anything, but I did vote for the guy this year, or last year, and
Right.
you know, I've had unfortunately, I let, like, my hopes go way too far, when you watch, like, too many cool political videos and spend too much time on X and, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, this is it, man. This might as well be Ron Paul." It's the same thing. And so you kinda get, uh, you know, blinded by all of that for a bit, and then I definitely got brought back down to a realistic, actual Earth over the last month or so.
It's almost comical how juxtaposed the first 3 months were with the next three in terms of things that would make a narrative impact in one direction or another. And yeah, I've been kind of more at a baseline because, happiness equals expectations minus reality. And I didn't think Trump was going to lower spending. I thought he was going to focus on deregulation to growth and then get to spending and do stuff with the executive outside of Congress. So there's different. I didn't think Iran was going to blow up into a war, so I wasn't worried about um, too many or disappointed about as many things. But it's like you said on the internet for a minute, it was like it's Ron Paul, it's happening, and then it's like it's George Bush. No matter who you vote for, you get Dick Cheney or John McCain or whatever. Uh, and the internet is kind of like exaggerating the baseline. The reality is somewhere in between, and like the peace through strength, that's just a phrase, but Trump's foreign policy strategy and his negotiation strategy is better than, at least actively trying to do regime change, like versus like getting, sucked into stuff. So at least there's not the explicit intent. So it makes it a lot harder to get sucked into that situation when regime change isn't your end goal. So that's a positive. But like we said, we knew where the negotiation would go if it didn't turn out a certain way, and we could suggest the libertarian policy of kind of totally backing out and hoping it stabilizes, but I don't think that's a risk they're willing to take, but their strategy has risks in a different way. So like these things are complicated. So I'd rather be debating between two different types of risks, or having the options of two different types of risks, rather than someone actively trying to secure the worst outcome.
Mhm. Yeah. No, that makes total sense. So while we're on a little bit of that topic right there, the thing that really, really upset me over the last couple weeks, and I've since been able to calm down on, was the Thomas Massie stuff between Trump. And I've seen you post about that a little bit, but um, that was actually what led me to, like, push me over the edge online to say a bunch of real mean stuff, you know? Um, it wasn't even the war. So I said, like, election night, I was on a podcast, and they were like, "What would make you regret your vote?" And I'm like, "Well, if he bombs a new country, that would do it." And honestly, when he did it, I was really mad about it,
Mm-hmm.
but I wasn't full on till I fully, like, I regretted it. It was the Thomas Massie stuff that really pushed me over the edge on that whole thing.
It's personal.
It feels personal because, it's not just who he's attacking, it's what he's attacking, and it's really all the people who, just repeat the line over and over again
Yeah.
online that were driving
The,
me nuts on that
the
stuff.
worst part is, the critics of Massey and the lines that the MAGA people are so uh, stale. It's like it's not. Some of them have smarter critiques, but a lot of them are just doing like these basic, like boomer political lines.
Mhm.
Um, and then a lot of people are really frustrated with Trump. I hear a lot of libertarians saying, "But like, why? Why is he doing it? This is not good for him. This is like stupid strategy for Trump. Trump should just leave him alone, etc." And what I always said, and especially around the first budget fight, was that like from Trump's perspective, he has to go after Massey, because if he doesn't go after Massey, all these other liberty Republicans are going to want to vote against the budget, because that's going to be what makes them more popular, unless Trump counteracts that somehow. And Trump's goal is to pass the budget for various reasons. Like we just established that. We can have an argument about that, but that's his goal. And so, like, he knows he can't primary Massey, because they've tried it before, and Massey got more support in his district than Trump did in the 2024 election. So it's impossible. So I made the joke that Massey is like the Dark Knight, and it's like we hunt him. He's the hero Gotham needs, but not the one it deserves right now, and we hunt him because he can take it or something. And like that's exactly right. Like Massey is connected to like fighting the core problem of spending, but we don't have a Congress in which we can get any results, and what we need to do is stuff through the executive right now. That's where the opportunity is. But we need Massey still like doing his thing where he is. So, and then Massey posted that today, which is like, I don't think Trump has a vendetta against me. He just needs to make an example of me so the rest of the Liberty people don't revolt, and he knows I can take it. So that's what Massey said today on Twitter. So that was basically exactly the line of thinking I was taking with the approach.
Basically did the Dark Knight line right there
Right.
is what it is. I I think my biggest issue with is I'm so pessimistic. I'm actually worried that he could lose,
Really?
in a primary. Yeah, and it really just has to do with time. So the last time, when Trump, uh, primaried or, endorsed an opponent against him, it was only 2 months before the primary election, during COVID. And, that's when, because the whole budget thing happened, I don't know,
Mm,
what, like, March or April or whenever it was, and their primaries in June. So there was, no time for them to organize anything to go against them. And so this time is a little bit different if they are gonna spend a ton of money. And, Massey's district is, very, very Republican, and I guess got some libertarians in there, also in the district to go and vote for him that don't wanna vote for Trump or whoever it is. He did perform better, like you said, in his district than Trump did. But I just wonder how many of those voters could actually get, switched over to whatever the Trump-backed candidate is, in that district. Listen, I'm super pessimistic, and plus, I said there was absolutely no.
just generally as a
All the time, yeah. I call it realism, but it's really pessimistic, um, and so it leads to me being right often, but also
yeah,
wrong sometimes. The good thing is when you're wrong, it's a good thing.
right.
So,
You can be a realistic pessimist and a realistic optimist.
okay. Are you
It's
saying I could choose to be a realistic optimist instead?
no, you can do both at the same
Okay,
time.
okay.
This is like possible good case scenario, possible likely negative case scenario.
Like,
Like,
equal weight for both of them, I guess, just consider both scenarios. Yeah, so I've been real pessimistic on it, thinking that he's actually gonna lose, which really makes me mad. But, like, is that
yeah.
likely to happen?
Well, I
I
would
don't.
say I don't think was going to lose because he, in his own district, he got more votes than Trump. Like a lot of other people, Trump's more popular
Yeah.
than the candidate. Um, it's just like, I mean, I wouldn't. It would be impossible from my perspective. Like, but so then people see, oh well, Trump's spending a lot of money on it. Trump's hiring Chris Levitica, his big political consultant. Like he's putting heavy hitters on the case. So we're like, ooh.
Mm,
But there's not. That's just part of the threat. Like if you want to demonstrate to someone what's going to happen if you go against Trump's agenda, getting Chris Leviticus sent against you is going to freak out most congressmen, even if it's not going to affect Massey.
mhm. So you
They
think
don't
that
want that to happen to them.
this itself is a negotiation, and not even a negotiation with Massey because he knows Massey's not gonna back down? You're saying that this is a negotiation with the rest of Congress right now?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. I mean, I like
exactly.
that
And
better.
Massey is a very specific district, so
Yeah.
it's specific district and specific profile. That's pretty much impossible for anyone to replicate to the same degree.
Yeah, okay. Alright, I like that theory better than, uh, Trump is the worst person imaginable, which which is, where, my
I
mind.
don't think he's totally happy with Massey. I think he would prefer to like negotiate or prefer to get Massey to vote, but like he's not going to lose his mind over it because it's also part of what he expects, and this is just how he would navigate that situation. So um, I don't think they have, like Massey said, it's not. I don't. He doesn't think Trump has a vendetta against him,
Yeah. Yeah. I like, okay.
even
Alright.
though it's like leave my boy Massey alone. Is like how you feel when you see all this go down.
Now there's,
And you
another.
have to play it all out. Yeah.
Mhm. as another interesting thing from this week, or I guess tail end of last week, and that's maybe a new political party, or I guess for sure a new political party coming into the fold. Um,
Yep.
America Party, started by Elon Musk. I I wouldn't recommend it from a business standpoint for him as far as all of his other companies go, but what's your thought on this whole thing, man? They got they got a chance. I guess you got enough money, you got a chance to do something, right?
Yeah. Well, there's regulatory hurdles, right? That unless you have enough money to take over the bodies that determine the rules, which is like a chicken and egg thing because you need to get elected first, you're going to have some barriers that money can't overcome. Um, but there's also a lot of areas without barriers, right? Like if he's concentrating on specific states and things like that, specific Senate races, you don't need a 50 state apparatus. So there's a lot of stuff he can do. And there's a lot of stuff that like the Libertarian Party can position itself in a way that you merge later instead of earlier, or you target totally different races because you're both going after small races. And there's this problem we've always had where there's different types of races that a third party can do well in. But it can't be the same third party. We thrive in areas where it's single party domination, and then the other party doesn't have a lot of resources invested in the counter elections, and then we can become like a legitimate option um, uh, relative to the weak party. But then there's other states that are really tightly contested, blue pilled purple states. Blue pilled or not purple, middle. What do you call it? What do you call it when you're in the middle?
I thought that was purple. What was that?
Yeah, purple. Right. That's
Mm.
blue and red together. So on the spectrum,
Now
color
I'm
spectrum, it's
questioning
the middle.
everything. I don't know.
Yeah. Just use color. I'll stick to colors from now on. But those states can be disrupted by a moderate, but not like a radical libertarian. Um, like you could, they're even enough that you could like immediately take half of each and be a third competitor. Like you could win an election fast. Um, and those states like we're not as good at. So it's really fun to see all these other people start to get into third party politics because they're starting to think about it and think about all the implications of what can you do, can you get leverage, can you spoil, can you win, where, who, what are the strategies, like what are the difficulties with ballot access. Like everyone's starting to talk about this now. So third party politics are becoming a lot more relevant, and I think we're a big part of that, as well as Kennedy, because we kind of broke the dam on what you could do. Because I think this is the first time since the late 1800s that third parties have actually used their leverage in the way that it is traditionally done. Where, like in the 1800s, you had a bunch of parties form around single issue coalitions, or around, the parties formed around single issues, and then they got those issues adopted and disappeared. And the Libertarian Party is like it's not an issue base, it's a value system that applies to every issue. So it could be treated more like a revolver than a musket. Because after you accomplish, if you're a single issue thing and you accomplish your thing, there's nothing you won, you succeeded. If we get one thing, we don't succeed. Like we get the Department of Education, we still care about every other issue. So we can be more like a revolver. And then there's going to be a bunch of other parties on top of that are picking out their issues or their areas or their strategies. So Um, it could combine all these things. Could like you could take the Constitution Party. You could work together. You can work separate on different levels. It can be a lot of different parties. It can merge. Anything could happen. So it's good to see third party politics get the relevance it deserves, because the leverage play is obviously there. Like, it blows my mind how people still talk about how oh, third party this is a waste of time, or third party is uh, I don't know, stupid, or the or like there's no value in running, because RFK is literally in charge of the largest government agency in human history. This mechanism should be fairly clearly demonstrated by now. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's, and by the way, I love, I I kinda love that RFK, you don't hear a ton about everything he's doing. He kinda seems
Hmm.
just to be riding, like, just doing his job, just doing everything that he said he was gonna do, and,
Hmm.
like, the best way possible, and, like, we're not really talking about it much, but I know he's back there working on stuff, and I agree with most of it, so
Yeah, he's doing
pretty
a
cool.
lot of stuff.
But it's, like, been none of the big, big news that's popped up that we've had to talk about, so there's almost been so much crazy stuff going on that it's allowed him to, I think, get a lot of stuff done.
He's just putting his head down and
Yeah.
going. Yeah, it does help because he can manage the situation, like, in peace or whatever. And then there another big news is there was a recent Supreme Court decision that passed like 8-1, um, the, that allows Trump to fire government employees. So that kicks up what RFK can do in the health agencies pretty drastically.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was, overly excited about at the beginning, just the idea of as many of these people getting fired as possible, and then, honestly, I was a little confused when I found out that that the president couldn't fire people that work, like, for the executive branch. It's kinda
Hmm.
weird to me, but yeah, it seemed like they used the courts quite a bit to try and stop everything they were doing in the early days, and, he's been getting wins on most of those things so far from
Yep,
what I
just
can
took
tell.
a few months, and everybody
Yeah.
freaked out and was like, Trump has to ignore the courts or whatever. And he was patient, and he knew, and it got resolved in his favor because it was basically just a shit test to try and make him impatient to do something that then they could call him out for violating the process. But they
Yeah.
were never going to be able to just hold up this posture of activist judges controlling everything because it's too absurd.
Yeah, he had a big win on even that one too. Like, you don't have to make all 600 or whatever judges are, happy now
Yep.
to take any of those actions, and I think that's a pretty good thing. I don't even think a universal injunction was a thing until, like, the '60s, or something like that. So I'm fine with that. I am just as fearful of judicial tyranny as I am executive tyranny, so I'm on board with that ruling.
I think we should be putting a lot of pressure on governors of red states, because, and I was thinking about this today. Someone was talking about how there was a big wave of migration to Texas in the 80s, like even more than now. She's like, Texas was so hot in the 80s. It was a place to go, and it's kind of a similar political atmosphere right now to the 80s, and the red states are, providing more opportunity and growth, and so it's like relatively good. But if you look at the actual government of Texas and even Florida, it's like 5% better than the Democrats. It's a disaster. I mean, they have very similar levels of bureaucracy and spending. Like, the difference is not as big as it could be. It makes the competition's easy when you're racing against a turtle. So if Vivek does something more radical in Ohio, that might be a better example. I mean, DeSantis is probably the closest, but I mean, I don't know if they have even a very free market, from a regulatory perspective. So, uh, and right now, states have the leeway to basically push the envelope as far as they want without getting shut down by the federal government. So we talk about the importance of localization. If you get a chance, if you get a federalist friendly executive in court, and you, that's like the opportunity that we're all involved in politics for. Now's the chance to push the envelope. It would be a shame if we didn't do anything on the state or local level, and then in 4 years or 8 years, we had another Demet and that just completely shut it down, and we lost the court, et cetera, and nothing was really done in the meantime. Because if you take the chance to do stuff now, it'll be really hard to reverse later.
Yeah, and, I've said this a ton of times, but, we all learned how important the local and state offices were during COVID. That became very obvious. I mean, most of the crazy stories you see from COVID, like, almost all the crazy stories you see from the lockdowns were local ordinances or,
Yeah,
state rules that went in place. And then, for me and my wife, it was, we could hardly tell anything ever happened. We went to the grocery store, we went to our favorite restaurant. It was, I'm here in Tennessee, just outside of Nashville, and
yeah.
the town next door, it was like nothing ever happened. And so it's so important who's running, any I mean, all the way down to, your mayor, your county commissioners, things like that, of course, and then your state governor as well. But those are easier things to focus on too. It's not quite as flashy. It's not quite as fun. Like those elections just aren't gonna, I don't know, get you quite as excited as talking about Epstein will. But they're very important and they have direct impact on people's lives.
Yeah. Um, I guess there's a lot of reasons why it doesn't translate to top billing on the internet. But most things that make the world go around don't get top feature on the internet. Like two guys, engineering a water system and planning it and selling it or something that makes a whole industrial plant operate. Like that's very important, but it's not going to be at the top of the news cycle. So like, um, we don't have to rely on that being the case for it to happen. But it's good to talk about it, and there are ways to talk about it. Like there's a lot of conservative influencers who go very viral talking about the importance of local elections. So
Mhm.
it's definitely possible to popularize as a general narrative. But it is just kind of funny, right? Like we can complain all we want, and we could even get everything we wanted out of the federal government and still be in a crappy situation if we don't take care of our own spheres of influence.
Yeah. I mean, my property taxes just went up by like 60% this year, and I'm more mad about the Epstein thing. So, you know, but the other thing is directly affecting me like right now. And it's,
I can see also how it creates a sense of despair, right? Because there's this feeling of, oh, can we? Epstein becomes like emblematic in people's mind of deep state political control, even though it's just like one blackmail ring.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of juice in there and a lot of people you could take down and extended networks. So it's like, it's significant, but it's not the be all end all of that universe. Like, um, and then, but so it becomes emblematic of that idea. And then you're like, well, if we don't get rid of it, that means that they are controlling things, and then that means that we're like stuck living under this like Soviet tyranny, and we're never going to escape. Like if it didn't happen with Trump, we're like screwed. So it creates a panic reaction also. But like I said, it's we've got it's like a bigger deal and less of a bigger deal than people think. It's like we've got a bunch of problems. So it's like the combination of red pilled and naive.
Y Yeah.
Like we were now we the we're at like the best case scenarios. We're at the end of Helm's Deep before like the worst part. We're not like It's like Lord of the Rings. This thing has levels to it. Okay, the third movie doesn't end for a while, and we might even be on the second now. So, uh, yeah,
I
I
think
have lots of reasons for finding opportunities, but I can see why you can get beat down by this kind of news.
I think what a lot of people are worried about, 'cause I don't think everyone sits around like I do thinking about the crushing power of the state, holding me down all the time. I think a lot of people, uh, don't really think about that much. What really gets them going is this idea of unequal application of the law or justice, and I think you take this big story like this where there's all these massive prominent players, that, could be implicated, and, like, that's the one. They're not gonna go after that one. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so it's just I think that's what a lot of people get upset about. Um, also all the, like, sex trafficking with the minors and stuff.
Yeah, right.
That should go
The
without
nature of it, and then the opportunity. It's yes, you're correct. It's emblematic of the biggest opportunity to punish um, people politically, to bring people to justice, right?
Mhm.
And that it can be the people involved in that. It can be things like Fauci. It can be like Malay just put the former, he shut down their transport agency and put the former president of it in jail, or prosecuted him for 1.4 billion in theft. So like those are the kind of big wins people want. And Curtis Yarvin talks about how it's very important to actually arrest people to scare them. So and he's not as much in favor of using this information for leverage, because he thinks it'll be much more effective to actually punish people. Michael Malice talks about this a lot, like how you need to set an example. So that's probably also they're talking about the John Brennan thing at the
Mm.
same, and the Comey prosecution at the same time as Epstein. So it's like this awareness of there's a demand for blood, right? And it's like if blood serves the mission, and from my perspective, if blood serves a mission, good. If it doesn't, I'm more interested in eliminating the Department of Education or the regulations around food production than I am in Fauci going to jail. Like, I'm more motivated by success than revenge. But if revenge serves success, through the example, then that needs to happen. But in general, forgetting about strategy, people just have a demand for justice. And then it's like, if that's not satisfied, it's like, are you in on it? So uh, that's another like psychological role that Epstein uh, case is filling.
I think what's most important for me in this is, I want the situation to change where we, don't have that in the future. Like, I don't care so much about the people. I don't care so much about the revenge or the, justice, like the people in prison, even like with Fauci and all that. I care about, okay, if we put Fauci in prison and then we just ignore what led to that situation, then did we actually win anything? Or is something like that just going to happen again? Did we decide that it was just Fauci? He's a bad guy. He's an evil character, but some other nice, virtuous person can come in and
Mm-hmm.
and they wouldn't do those things. Um, did we actually learn the lesson of what
They
led?
have no fear of being punished for doing the same thing. You got to put the fear into the bureaucrat, or yeah,
What I just think it's more important is that we truly solve the problem, and I don't think the problem is, like, the bad person that was in there.
right. It's
It's
system
the system
oriented.
itself, which, if you've got any ideas on how to solve that problem, let me
Yeah,
know.
you're right. Because even if you punished Fauci and made people more sort of afraid, like ultimately the system is going to produce the results it produces. So the prosecution of Fauci would have to lead to changes in the system to be
Mhm.
useful. And there's plenty of ways that it could. And, we could just do it anyways, because why not for that?
Yeah.
But just thinking about all these things in terms of how they play together. Um, yeah.
All right, so that we've reached the end of the things that I had, and by me, I mean that Aaron had said that we need to talk about. What else you got? Are we
I,
coming up
I
on good here?
we could be good pretty soon. I guess the one thing about the Epstein too that I'd be curious to get your take on it because uh, it's become a really powerful narrative, and I just don't understand it as my narrative. So, but I want to like steelman it because people are saying that Trump isn't releasing the Epstein files because of Israel,
Mm.
and I'm like, but at the same time, people are saying that Trump is on the Epstein files, so that's like incriminating in itself. Um, there's like one of the biggest ways we talk about the Epstein files is in terms of like Bill Gates and the most powerful Americans and the most powerful British and all of the Five Eyes of intelligence and like so when so why would it be that like Israel is the limiting factor on Trump releasing the files when like our entire domestic deep state and European deep state and Israeli deep states are all like, and all the most powerful people in the world are like part of this conversation.
Um, so just so you know, when it comes to the Israel stuff, I've never been real big into paying too much attention to it. Like I've dug into it because you kind of have to
Mm-hmm.
understand where people are coming from. But my initial reaction on Israel stuff has always been, I just don't wanna give them money anymore.
Right.
And other than that, like, I don't really care. I just don't wanna give them money, or any of the other countries we give money to. So I'm not super well versed in all of the, Israel's running the world kind of talk, although they might be, and I just don't know about it.
Well, I guess because they say with Epstein, Maxwell,
Mhm.
what her father was Mossad,
Robert
but
Maxwell, yeah, was,
he, but Epstein got his start out of the social networks of the British royal family and was working for the CIA in the 70s, like long before he had interactions with Mossad. So it's not that surprising that a guy in all those networks would like partner with, you know,
yeah.
someone from in that universe. But like, it's like we jump from one tenuous connection, then connected to another, and then all of a sudden, like XYZ is happening because of Israel.
Yeah.
So that kind of like confuses me.
Yeah, no,
But
I've seen all those theories for sure, and I think the only way I think, they'd be calling the shots on this, like, we would release it if not for, the Mossad connection, would be if you were to find if it says in the papers that basically Mossad created this entire thing, like, this entire thing was their idea, they're the principal source,
right.
we came in and aided, but, um, I think if the news did come out which I don't know, governments do terrible things all the time. We could talk about terrible things that Israel's government could be doing right now. Um, but I think if it came out that they had created this sex trafficking ring with children and all that and
Mm-hmm.
kept this whole thing going the whole time in order to try and blackmail these powerful people, like it would be the biggest um Jewish conspiracy trope thing that you had ever seen in your entire life, becoming true right there
Mm-hmm.
before everyone's eyes, and it might I don't know, it might just destroy their whole country. I'm not
Right.
sure
Well,
exactly
right. Well, that's why I like bring up the Maxwell connection because that's what people cite. As there's a lot of things people cite, but that's like what it's often centered around. And the oh yeah, and but he was a highest bidder operation operating like across networks in a way where um, strict Mossad agent would have been too constrained in doing. He was a guy playing
Mhm.
throughout the whole space. Um, so, I mean, maybe yeah, I guess if that came out right, but uh, yeah, I think it's like we said, it's part of the people are getting really attached to narratives and everybody's like syncing up on these narratives, and the internet's kind of like going crazy with different bubbles of thought. So like if you just have an independent analysis, it's going to be hard for it to match up to any of these currents that are happening. So it's a super chaotic landscape right now, and it gets worse the more we don't have solutions and the more we have disappointments like the Epstein files, and like we were talking about on like Twitter right now is just insane. Like people are mad about a million different things. We're talking about the same thing. It changes every 3 days or whatever, and it basically it's like seems like a madhouse of stress and despair.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I actually backed way off on Twitter, starting last weekend. I just like, I can't, because I've spent a lot of time on there doing my thing, and I'm like, "Man, this is always negative. I'm always in a terrible mood after I get off of here. Most of this stuff doesn't really matter, and I'm not gonna convince that guy anyway, so I probably shouldn't spend all this time arguing with him." So I decided to back way off of it, because the craziest things shouldn't really come to the top. Like the Israel Epstein thing, whatever. I don't have any evidence that they were running them any more than the CIA was, and so it could be both, or it could be all of them. And
As if they're not a big club, anyways.
yeah, I mean they're yeah, they're just a giant club anyway. I'm sure that they share plenty of their assets, with one another, as well as with all the other major intelligence agencies. And so, I don't know what to do about the whole immediately blaming Israel for everything. It's good to maybe one of the reasons is that we got into a world where you couldn't talk about them without it being anti-Semitic, and
Mhm.
so that causes, uh, the a reaction that you at least want in that scenario, which is that people are like, "Huh, that's weird. Why can't I talk about that?
Yeah,
They must be running everything, you know? If I criticize the American government or the German government or whatever, name your government, I'm not immediately a bigot for doing so, and so, this is odd. Why can't I criticize these people?" And so the censors, I
yeah.
think, and the people who just cry bigot or anti-Semite, I think are
It,
creating their own
it's
problem.
and then when you disagree with that framework, your disagreement is taken as you suggesting they are an anti-Semite. So it's like
Yeah.
because that would be like because that's how they're used to
Mhm.
getting responded to. Um, but it's like yeah, like everything, like Israel with Iraq or Israel with Syria, like um, people are saying that the Iraqi oil was for Israel because the pipeline we were planning in Iraq before it went to shit went, um, connected from Iraq to Israel. But that pipeline was originally constructed by the British. The oil doesn't end at Israel. That's like the access point to go up or into Europe. And then, like, the US gets a lot of energy from the Middle East, and we're interested in the trade of oil in dollars, and it would be American companies involved in it. So it's like you take this one detail, like the pipeline was going to Israel, and that means that Israel was the only person involved with an interest in like the military and corporate interests doing the interventionist foreign policy that we've been doing for the last 140 years since the progressive era. Like where is the analysis of like the momentum or pressures of or goals of empire and all of this, because
Mhm.
that's a pretty like foundational libertarian analysis.
I feel like they'd still have to pay, like, market price for the oil, regardless. I mean, I guess you save on some transportation expenses and
Well,
stuff.
it's never about the home base economy. It's about the connected corporation. So,
Mm.
like, people are benefiting. It's just not the countries. So it's the same thing with British colonialism, where they were So you'd subsidize access to a resource at a price that actually is not profitable in the market. So the population is paying for this big intervention that's going to allow X company to set up a rubber plant. That company is going to make a lot of money off of it because it was subsidized. So, like, if you only had private security or private military, the engagements would be much more limited if you actually wanted to have a viable business plan. So, like, that's why obviously war and empire is bad for the country and good for the special interests.
Mm. So, what we learned in this is that you're probably some kinda backdoor paid Israel shill,
Yeah,
that's what I heard. So, that's how easy the discourse is online, you just call someone a name, you know?
yeah.
Um, but no, I don't know how to stop people from going that far with things, and it doesn't help your argument when people go when you take it all the way.
Well, it's hard with Trump too because you're thinking about convincing Trump, and it's like you just tell him you're controlled by Israel, and it's like, okay, well, I have like that doesn't engage with anything he's thinking in real life. And second, if that were the case, and there's no, well, then you're screwed. What's the point of having a conversation, anyways?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
I don't see him as someone that's, like, completely controlled by them. I think they have quite a bit of sway, more so than a lot of other people do, and I think that's because, Christian evangelicals, go the whole line of that, whatever the Bible verse is that Ted Cruz was talking about on Tucker Carlson, and, that's such it's actually, like, such a big thing for people. I know people that live in America that have, like, an Israel thing right here, um,
yeah.
in the kitchen, which is weird, but it's,
There's a lot of
know
fanboying for the Holy Land, and it's
Yeah,
created a lot of unconditional support. There's some thinking that if you dispelled that theology, then the whole situation would resolve itself and the US would stop funding Israel. But ultimately, like, it, those arguments and the argument about it, do they have a 2,000-year-old claim to the land, kind of don't answer the final question, because at the end of the day, like, it doesn't matter if like you care about the bullshit 2,000-year-old claim. Like, nobody thinks that Israel doesn't have a right to the place that they occupy now. Basically, like, you don't. All people care about is if you get people in an area for 2-3 generations, they're going to treat it as their own and fight for it. Like, they can do, they can say, they can try and justify it based on 2,000-year-old history, but that's bullshit for a like situation that most people are going to accept anyways. Um, like, no one on the other side of that argument expects that Israel is just going to leave. You know what I mean?
mhm,
So
yeah. That is like, people on the other side of the argument that, will argue against that I don't like what you just said. I don't know if they've accepted that Israel is not just gonna pick up and leave, and this is the reality of the world that we live in, and we gotta find a way to, see if we can find peace in that area if that's ever gonna happen. I don't think it's possible personally, for there to actually
oh,
be
for
peace.
peace, I think there's going to be peace in the Middle East. I think that's. I don't know if we talked about this on the last time. Maybe that was. Oh yeah, I did an episode with Jacob Winograd. But yeah, well, the whole Middle East is completely sick of war. They
Mm,
were already fairly developed like 30 years ago. At the same time, the U.S. has lost its appetite for war, um, and they are not going to make uh, peace with the rest of the Middle East and the U.S. conditional on a two-state solution in Palestine, where we think that they care about it more than they do, in the sense because it's like a great offense to um, the Muslims, and there's a it's like a big battle against Israel, etc., and they care about it more than anything. And that's not true. Ultimately, those countries are not going to sacrifice their own interests for the sake of Palestine. And especially when you combine it with the plan of developing Palestine with rich regional Arab interests. So you get the different Arab countries and Muslim countries invested in the rebuild of Palestine, and then they will put both a check on Hamas and a check on Israel. So, it's not exactly the two-state solution that people hope for, or that might be the correct thing to do. But I don't think it's going to limit peace in the Middle East. I think that's going to be the trend in the Middle East, and I don't think it's the worst outcome for the Palestinians because, like I said, the rich Arab influence puts a check on, at least somewhat of a check on Israel.
Do
And
you think the
those areas.
Palestinians will actually accept that? Uh,
No, probably not. But uh, yeah, I don't, because they have to leave for the rebuild, is what people are saying. But I mean, maybe it'll happen in sections. The negotiation right now is with the Hamas leadership. So if the Arabs can, if the regional Muslims can have a successful talk with Hamas, then the Palestine situation will be easier to manage.
yeah.
And I don't think everybody has to leave for a rebuild. Like, I don't think that framing is.
It's gonna be difficult. I mean, I don't you always see the pictures of the worst areas in Gaza. I don't know if the entire strip actually looks like that or if that's just what those blocks look like, but there's gonna be a lot of unexploded ordnance in those areas that they're gonna
Yeah.
have to
Holy
carefully
crap.
removed over it's gonna take, years and years for them just to get all that stuff out of the way, unless they've got some kinda, uh, some new techniques from how long it's taken them before to do.
Yeah. Yeah. General, like, clearing of the area, or like you said, explosive mines, booby traps. Who knows what it
Because
is? I mean,
well, it's just no, I don't know what the error rate
metal.
on the bombs that they're dropping, but
Like,
there's a certain rate that don't explode, and so they're you can't just run through there with a bulldozer right now, without, uh, destroying the blue the bulldozer with bombs in the process, just from the
wow.
bombs they've dropped,
What
you
a
know?
mess.
Yeah.
I'm glad the Iran-Israel war didn't result in two cities just getting bombed to smithereens. Because, like, trench warfare is a little more stable, but like when the war is just cities bombing each other, you're like, oh, okay, how long can this last? Because
Yeah. Yeah. Turns out it can go on for, 2 cities bombing each other, yeah, I don't know, but, it's
it
gone on
lasts about 2 weeks.
yeah, about 2 weeks, and, it didn't turn into World War III,
Yeah.
so that's good news. So far, the peace is holding up. I lost a bet with my friend. I said it would be less than 2 weeks before, one country would try to, get the other country to attack them and violate their ceasefire, so,
Mm.
um, I guess I lost a bet. That's me being pessimistic again.
Yeah, there you go. I'll be optimistic. You be pessimistic.
That sounds
I,
good, man.
I figured it would play out like the Soleimani situation.
Yeah.
Um, and it's kind of like almost comical, where like we know that the reason for the war is not nuclear weapons. Like,
Mhm.
nuclear weapons are just a simple single narrative focus. I guess kind of like how we do on Israel, right? Like, that's why those narratives rise to the top, because you need a single easy narrative focus, and nukes are it for them. In reality, like, Iran in 5 years with Chinese tech could blow up a city with just drones. They're like, with the shifting landscape. I mean, you could technically, like, North Korea doesn't need nukes. They have purely enough threat through physical artillery on Seoul. Like, so there's a lot of ways that you can cause damage, and it was clearly more about the timing of the rest of Iran's rivals falling, and now this being an opportunity to go after them, etc. So it was funny to see Trump just like call their bluff on the nuclear thing, because everybody's saying, "Oh, the reason is nuclear." It's like, boom. Well, there's no more nuclear, so all right, time for a peace deal. And I thought his statements about it were really funny. Like, sometimes you gotta let him fight for a little bit and then stop him.
That's where the whole daddy thing came in, you know?
Yeah, hilarious.
Yeah, that's where that thing happened. See, once again, it's you being more optimistic than I'm being because, I'm like, "Man, we really lucked out of that one," and, I guess Trump did exactly what, uh, Netanyahu wanted them to do, and, here we almost got into a major war, and the way you're looking at it is that was actually his way of coming in and just ending this thing before it turned into something that
Right.
was way
Well, I thought it would end, and it did end. So from it's hard to fully explain the perspective, maybe because it's kind of simple, but like I assume that the response would be a controlled Soleimani type response from Iran, and then that this would create like an impetus for a peace deal because like we did the thing, because it's either that or you escalate. And if the U.S. is looking for a non-escalatory response from Iran, then that's going to be like the signal for next offer, basically. Um, uh, but yeah, I'm very glad the war ended, and I think it's gonna stay ended because, again, I think their peace is not conditional on a two-state solution.
Hmm. Well, I gotta wrap this up.
Yeah, sounds
Um,
good.
Go ahead if you're cool with that.
For
Um,
sure.
Hopefully everyone's enjoyed it, so far. Why don't you tell everyone I don't know if there's any points of order here or business notes that we're supposed to do, when we do these kind of things. What do you think people need to know? Where can they find you and all that good stuff?
Yeah, Ludwig Never Mises on Twitter, X, and then History 102 on YouTube. And I've got my links to stuff on X, so I think that's probably a good enough of an update on that for now.
There you go. And I guess I'll take the opportunity to say I have, another show as well called Good Morning Liberty. We just put out our 1,588th episode today, so, go check that out, and after you listen to all of these episodes, go check that one out. So Austin, thanks so much for hanging out with me tonight, man. It was fun. Um, Hopefully we can do it again soon. And to all the people hanging out with us, thank you for being here. Make sure you tell a friend, uh, tell a family member that they need to follow the Decentralized Revolution podcast, and we'll be back again next Wednesday. I think that's what we're gonna do. So thanks for hanging out. Let me end
All
the
right,
stream.
pleasure talking to you, Nate. Catch y'all later.